Hey sweets, it's Ashton Nicole. I wanted to come to you guys. As most of you know, I am a first-time mom, and I wanted to share with you guys my labor and delivery process. Throughout my pregnancy, I planned to have a natural birth, and so I went to some classes to teach you about the process of labor. And that was given by Miss Gwynne Knapp of Confident Childbirth in Atlanta, Georgia. So if you're interested in that information, I'll post it below. What an awesome class. It taught me so much that I did not even know about, and I was very grateful for that information. It prepares you for a natural labor, and it prepares you to learn how to manage the pain that you would go through in a natural labor. So I was very thankful for that class. And I wanted a natural labor because I very much so wanted to be an active participant in my whole labor process. I wanted my husband to be an active participant. I wanted to, and I know this is probably going to sound weird, but I actually wanted to feel what my body was doing. And I wanted to just enjoy the birthing process. So I guess I'll start with 37 weeks, because that's when it's okay, when your baby is not preterm. That's when it's okay to actually have a healthy baby. And at 37 weeks, I went into my appointment. I was not dilated at all. 38 weeks, I was dilated half of a centimeter. 39 weeks, I made it to a centimeter. And 40 weeks, I was 1.5 centimeters dilated, 50% effaced. So my cervix was opening and it was ripening, but obviously you never know when your labor is going to take off. It's pretty much just a waiting game. All you can do is prepare and make yourself comfortable for what's about to take part. So throughout my period at 37 weeks all the way to, I went to 41 weeks, I did have a lot of false labor, which is called prodromal labor. And from what I understand, my baby was in a poor position based on ultrasounds. And so what happens is your body starts the laboring process in hopes to get your baby into the right position for labor. So that happened to me quite a bit, and I mean I had at least 3 or 4 experiences with false labor where my body started contracting, and my contractions were coming about every 8 minutes, and then it moved down to 6 and then went down to 5. And you're taught to go to the hospital when it's 411, so every 4 minutes apart, lasting at least a minute for an entire hour. So lasting an entire, wait, did I say that right? You're supposed to head to the labor when your contractions are 4 minutes apart, though if those contractions are lasting a minute, at least a minute, for an hour. So from 40 weeks to 41 weeks, me and my husband, we came up with this plan. I was working out like 3 times a day, even through my contractions. And by working out, I'm not talking like strenuous working out or anything like that. I'm talking walking a lot. I would go walk a mile 3 times a day, so 3 miles a day. I would also do lots of squats, and I would do yoga to open up my pelvis bone. And I would also, of course, drink a lot of water, get some rest, those sorts of things to help open up my body and get my baby into the correct positioning. So I did that for a whole entire week, and throughout that time we were praying like the whole time, asking God to get my baby in the right position and for me to go into labor. So fast forward to my 41 week mark. Of course, you have your doctor's appointments every week, and your doctors talk to you about induction, because you cannot go past 42 weeks, or it's not recommended that you do. And I'm sure any pregnant woman out there does not want to go past 42 weeks, because at that point you're very uncomfortable, your feet may be swollen, just out of breath, just tired, and plus you want to meet your baby. So the doctors don't recommend going past 42 weeks, and at that point they discuss, or a week before shall I say, they discuss an induction. And so we scheduled our induction, and I felt some kind of way about it because I didn't want to get induced. I just wanted everything to happen naturally, because you're also taught you want to minimize the interventions that you have in your labor and delivery, because it makes for a smoother process. So that's something that me and my husband discussed. We had to schedule it because we didn't know if she was going to make it to the 42 or if she was going to go to the 43. You just never know. It's very unpredictable. So we scheduled the induction, and after scheduling we just continued to pray. Let this happen by itself. You know, we don't want to be forced or anything. We want to be comfortable with our decision. And so literally at 41 weeks I started having my contractions again, and I'm thinking this is like a regular routine, because keep in mind, this whole period, whole month or so, I've been having like sporadic contractions. And so at that point I really didn't know the real labor contractions versus my false labor contractions, because they all felt the same. I've been having them and they all felt the same. So me and my husband, we went to bed, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I started having these contractions that woke me up, and I ignored them because I'm like, well, you know, let me just go back to sleep and see if they continue. So they continued, and they were starting off about every 6 minutes. And so I'm trying to get some sleep, because I'm like, okay, well maybe this is the real deal, but I don't want to wake my husband if it's not. So I'm just going to try to sit through them as long as I can. And now I'm timing them, and they're getting to 5 minutes. And so I'm like, okay, well let me try to, you know, go walk around the house or get some water. I go do that, and they're continuing every 5 minutes apart. And so I was thinking, maybe I should just go try to, you know, sit in a different position on the couch. It seemed like just sitting up for me was the most comfortable position when I was pregnant, towards the end of my pregnancy. So I was thinking, hey, maybe if I go sit on the couch, I'll be a little bit more comfortable. I went to go sit on the couch, and now my contractions are 4 minutes apart. I finally wake my husband up, and I'm breathing through my contractions, and he calls the doctor for me, and you know, she recommends us coming in, and he explains to her that we want to do a natural laboring process, so we're going to try to stay at home, and she recommended us to not wait longer than 3 minutes apart. And so in the meantime, you know, he made me a hot bath to make me a little bit more comfortable, put some lavender, smelled really, really good, just to kind of calm my body and prepare for what we were about to go into. So from 2 o'clock to about 5 o'clock, we labored at home, and we finally decided to go to the hospital around 5:30ish. Called my mom, she met us up there, and you know, I'm thinking, hey, my contractions are now about 3.5 minutes apart. This is active labor, like for real, for real. I know that this is true labor. And so if you're pregnant or you've been pregnant, you know that active labor begins at 4 centimeters. Well, I think they might have extended it now to like 6 centimeters. I can't remember what Gwynne said in class, but it used to be where early labor was 1 to 3 centimeters, and then 4 to 8 centimeters was active labor, and then 8 to 10 was transition, and then obviously you start pushing after 10. So we get to the hospital. The first thing they do, they put a baby monitor on your belly to maintain their heartbeat. They also put, they take your blood pressure, they check how far you've dilated, and they let us know that I was only 2 centimeters dilated. Okay, so after 3 hours of having consistent contractions, strong contractions, I was only 2 centimeters dilated. At that point, I was okay, because again, you trust your body. God made our bodies for a reason. He allowed women to maintain life within us and to labor life, to give birth to beautiful babies. So I'm trusting in what he did for our bodies, and I know that everything is okay at this point. At that point, they say, okay, we're going to monitor your contractions for a while, and they hook you up to a contraction monitor and, like I said, a blood pressure monitor for your vitals. 2 or 3 hours pass, and they come back in and they check me again, and I made no progress. No progress. I'm still 2 centimeters dilated. We decide to get Pitocin. Now, I did a lot of research on Pitocin prior to, because it's very common, but at that point I wasn't really progressing, and we needed something. She was seeing that I was having consistent contractions. They just weren't strong enough to move the process along, so we did decide on Pitocin. My doctor came back in to check how far along I progressed in those 2 to 3 hours. And by that time, I was 4 centimeters dilated. And I was like, okay, so this stuff is working. Obviously, it works. And so by that time, my contractions have became closer together, maybe about 2 to 3 minutes apart. And they're pretty strong at this point because I'm moving into active labor. So I hadn't told too many people this, but when I was going through those contractions, they were so painful that I would think of like Jesus on the top of the hill telling me, you got this, Ashley. You got this, Ashley. And so it's almost embarrassing to say, but that's how painful the contractions are. Like, you need Jesus in your life if you don't have him at that point. So that's what got me through a lot of the pain, just thinking of like Jesus. And I kept telling myself that, and my husband kept telling me that. And so I was getting through it. And, you know, fast forward to lunchtime, my doctor comes back in and she poses the question, do you want me to break your water? And so we checked to see how far along I was dilated again. And at that point, I was 5 to 6 centimeters dilated. So now it's about 1 o'clock. And I had been in labor since 2 a.m. She ended up breaking my water, which was the most painful thing. When she went in to break my water, I said, okay, I'm about to have a contraction. And she said, I am so sorry. Please forgive me, but I need this contraction to break your water. And so I was like, ah! It hurt so bad. But, you know, it was quick. Thank God. It was very, very quick. It just took her seconds to do it. The process is supposed to speed up a lot, which is the whole purpose of breaking your water. So at this point, I'm 5 to 6 centimeters dilated, and the contractions are just ruthless. You know, they're coming back to back to back, or that's what it felt like. At this point, I don't know how close they were, but I know that they were back to back to back. And I'm just breathing and breathing and breathing, and my nurse comes in there. She was so amazing. Shout out to Tiffany. if you see this, she was amazing. And oh, plus she's a soror, I have to say that. Yay. And my doctor was too, so that was a plus. But you know, she was awesome, because I'm sure I was probably acting a fool at this point. Or I know I was. I'm not even gonna say probably, I was. Literally, when the baby passes through the birth canal, you feel all that pressure just like on the butt. And so I felt it like all in my back and all in my butt area. And I guess that raised the question like, okay, back labor. With back labor, you have back labor typically because your baby is in a poor position. I think for maybe an hour or two, I was like feeling so much pressure. Like it felt like she was literally coming out of my butt. And you know, Tiffany just kept me calm, and she was saying, it's okay, you know, that's how it feels, da da da, you're okay, she's not coming out your butt, I promise. 7 p.m. So all that time had passed, and I'm still laboring, unmedicated. And she comes in, and then she says, I'm gonna check you. So she checks me, and ended up finding out that my little baby was in a bad position. So she was in a posterior position, which is not good at all. And they call that sunny side up. And so that nurse said, you know, we're gonna have to get her to turn around. And she was very calm when she told me. I think I just started panicking. And keep in mind, the whole time I was like walking around on my birthing ball, breathing, keeping my mind off of what I was going through. I did not want to be in the bed. It was more difficult for me to sit there and get through a contraction rather than bouncing on my birthing ball or, you know, just moving. So the position that she suggested to get the baby to turn around was a bedridden position. And you had to sit on your side. I mean, well, like lay on your side. Gave it a try, and I sat through maybe 5 contractions, which was about, you know, it wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes or so. And I remember I just started crying, telling my husband, I'm not gonna be successful in a natural labor if I have to sit on the bed. I cannot do this. I can't do this. And so he was like, babe, just give it a bit more. Try it a little bit longer. You know, we have to get her to turn around. It's okay. It's okay. And so I'm like sitting through a contraction, and my next contraction that I had in that position was just ridiculous. Like, I mean, I couldn't even breathe properly because I was just like laying there. It was just such an awkward position. And I remember getting up from that position, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And by this time I was just crying and crying and crying. And, you know, my husband was just like, calm down. It's okay. It's okay. And I said, well, we got to get her to flip around. I can't do this. I can't do this. And my doctor came in, and she was saying, you know, if you get an epidural, your body will relax. You'll be able to lay in that position, and the baby will flip over. And, you know, clearly that's something that we had to think about, because my ultimate goal was just to get through a natural labor. And so by this time I was about 15 or 16 hours into labor. And me and my husband, we talked about it, and I told him, he was definitely encouraging me to continue on with the natural labor. You can do this, you know, you're already 16 hours into it, you can do it, you're almost there. And at this point, with all of those hours passing, I didn't know how far along dilated I was. So at that point I didn't know, but I chose to go ahead and get an epidural because I wanted my daughter to flip, and I did not ultimately want to go into a cesarean. So I chose to get the epidural so that I can continue in that position. At this point I'm like, okay, I don't want to miss the window for the epidural, you know, because then what if I don't get my baby to flip back around in time? Then I'm gonna be pushing for a long time. So, you know, I was thinking like, maybe I need to get the epidural as soon as possible. That way I can sit in this position and flip her over, because I'm already far along in my laboring process. So I finally got the epidural, and it took maybe about 15-20 minutes after to actually get through my system. And I remember still having the contractions and telling my doctor, I can still feel my contractions. Like, and I couldn't feel it took off the sharpness for sure, but I could still feel when I was about to have a contraction. And she explained that's a good thing. You know, it's going to help when you start pushing, which it really, really did. I pushed literally for like 5 minutes, maybe, if that. And part of that was probably because I felt when I was about to have a contraction, so I could push with it rather than against it. So with that being said, I went ahead and got the epidural, and by this time I was maybe like, I think 2 hours had passed since I made the decision to get epidural, maybe an hour. So I might have been like 18 or 19 hours in labor. And I went back into the position that the nurse told me about, and I was in that position. I did one side, and then I flipped to the other side to sit in that position, and I did that position maybe for an hour and a half. And by that time of me sitting in that position, I was like ready to start pushing, like at a 10 centimeters dilated. And you know, the epidural really did help my body to calm down enough to get my baby in the correct positioning, because by the time I was ready to push, she was back in a proper not a pushing position. She was in a proper position for pushing. And they explained, you know, you want to push with contractions and all of that good stuff. So I did that, and I pushed her out in like 5 minutes or less. It was very, very fast. God has a plan and a design for everybody. You know, my main purpose was to be active in my laboring process and my delivery process, and I got that out of my experience. Like I said, I went unmedicated for 17-18 hours. For me, that allowed me to get what I needed out of my laboring and delivery process. So I wasn't disappointed. I just accepted that that was the path that God wanted me to go on. I was not educated. Some people can go through a natural labor with a child being in a posterior position. I've read about it before. But for me, I was uneducated. I didn't expect for that to happen to me. I didn't expect for my baby to get into a poor position. Didn't think twice about it. But because she did, I had to react based off of that. And I was not educated. And my husband wasn't educated. Now, if it wasn't so painful, maybe I would have took the time to try to Google some stuff. You know, but because I was in pain and everything is, you know, rolling, you have to make quick decisions. And for me, that was the best decision. I got everything that I wanted to out of my labor. I had my man doula, which is my husband, there with me. I had my mom, and they both were comforting me throughout the whole entire process. I very much so was very, very active. I was able to walk around and move around for majority of my labor, minus the position that I had to go to, and you know, later on in my laboring process. But I definitely got what I wanted out of my experience. And you know, I think somebody else asked me, would you do it all over again the same way? Yes, I would, because that was definitely my path. And like I said, I enjoyed it. I think my laboring process was very exhilarating. I think birthing a baby is very exhilarating, and it's very much so an experience that will change your life. And you know, most people say, oh, I'll never do that again, I'll never do that again. But you know, it was a good experience for me. I have no complaints. Even with the curveballs that I was thrown, I would so do it all over again. And I guess that's a story of preparing for a natural labor and having to make the decision to get an epidural. Now, if I have another child, would I do the natural birthing process again? Yes, I would so do it. I think I would probably educate myself on things that could possibly, happen, to try to overcome those obstacles, because, different things happen when you're in labor. And maybe I would have been successful if I would have had a doula there with me, because they are very knowledgeable about the different things that can happen. So I would so do it over again. Would I encourage other people to have a natural birth? Heck yeah, because it's so exhilarating to know what your body is doing and how it feels and how you feel while your body is doing that. So I encourage everybody to be an active participant in their labor, and if you want that kind of journey and that kind of experience, then go for it. But if you do not, and if you don't want any pain, or if you don't want to have to go through that, then get an epidural. Do what you have to do for your experience. Everybody's experience is different. Everybody's desires are different. So you have to do what makes you happy, and you have to do what's good for you and your baby. And so that's my labor and delivery story. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys can learn a little bit from it. And as always, thank you so much for watching.